Good morning, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you've submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic. And at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and may be uploaded to our website and or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. We also ask all attendees to mute their devices to reduce disruptions to the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the MGA Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. This morning we are piloting a new voting system. If there are any issues with the electronic voting system, we'll revert to our typical manner of voting by raising hands. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
Good morning, Reeve Link, Brian from administration. We do have administration has one proposed addition, and it is the review of the Affordable Housing Funding Program's RMA resolution, just with addition of background information. And we propose to add that to the end of the agenda today under 2.4.9. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Henderson. Any other additions or changes? I do have two requested additions. I did receive correspondence regarding National Legion Week, which is actually this week. And so if we could consider perhaps adding that under 2.410. And then as well, I would like to ask council to consider ratifying my attendance at the Community Futures Network of Alberta AGM. It would be AGM and there is a conference. I'm not available to attend the majority of the conference. It would be maximum 1.5 days, but I can elaborate when we get there. Perhaps 2.411. Does anybody else have any other additions or changes?
Yes, just a time slot request for 2.48 Merrifield RV lot storage lease. There's some people that would like to be here for Lyalta Community Hall, so I told them I would ask if we could have 11 a.m. time.
Does anyone on council object?
Thank you.
A motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Thank you, Councillor Bigger. We have the minutes from our regular Wheatland County Council meeting from September 5th.
Just point of order.
We should vote.
Vote, and it will just be a second to get the electronic one going.
Perfect. Patience. I think it really helps the voting system work if I call the vote. That will help.
Oh, look at that. We have to submit. Okay. Perfect.
You've been part of history, folks.
Can I request a mail-in ballot, please?
Nope. Nope, you may not. So motion is carried. Now we'll move to the minutes from our regular council meeting from September 5th. Did anybody see any errors or omissions?
I'll move the minutes as presented.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Are we able to open it back up just for a moment? If we could, just because we are all compelled to vote unless there's a reason to recuse yourself. I'll call the question. Councillor Laverson, is your voting working? Is it? It's just not showing.
I wasn't here, so I abstained.
I think we sought clarity on that, and I believe you can still vote for minutes.
Yeah, if there's a motion in front of council, a councillor is compelled to vote. You can't abstain for just being absent from a meeting. There are reasons why you can abstain from a vote. They're listed in the MGA. I forget the exact section, but being absent from a meeting isn't one of them. If you don't vote for or against, there's a provision in the MGA that you could be disqualified as a councillor if you don't vote on the matter.
So you're saying even if you're not here, you can vote anyway?
On minutes, yes. If you're not here for a public hearing, you can't. For the whole public hearing, then you would be required to abstain. The requirements are in the Municipal Government Act.
Okay. Let's have a do-over.
Okay. I will call the question for the minutes of the September 5th regular council meeting. Oh, sorry. Oh, perfect. Okay.
You can change it.
Show us how.
There you go, and then you can put in. So there's a voting in progress at the top.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you, CAO Henderson, and thank you, Shanna. Motion is carried. We'll move to the minutes from the September 12th special council meeting. Any errors or omissions?
I'll move the minutes as presented.
Any questions? Any questions? All in favor? You bet. I think it's just missing capturing one, right? Councillor Kester, did you vote again?
Yeah, I did. It was up.
Missed him this time. It missed Councillor Bigger last time.
Yeah. Click on that vote in progress, just see if it, there we go. Motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. And thank you to the public's patience. We are new to this system. We will move to agenda item 2.1, bylaw 2023-23. Good morning.
Good morning, Council. Taylor Feltz here with the Planning and Development Services team to present bylaw 2023-23 for Council's consideration of first reading and to request that Council schedule a public hearing for this bylaw on October 17th. The bylaw proposes to redesignate the subject lot from Agricultural General District to the Rural Business District in order to facilitate the development of a wedding venue that includes a bed and breakfast, entertainment venue, and short-term overnight camping for patrons of the venue. Referring to page 18, which I have up on the screen here, The subject lands are located within the southeast quarter of 33-23-25 west of the 4th Meridian, which is 5 kilometers south of the town of Strathmore, immediately west of Range Road 253. The site is developed with a dwelling, a detached garage, a concrete pad and patio space that are used for outdoor events and entertaining. Water and wastewater servicing are provided by means of a private well and sewage treatment system. These lands produce a small yield of alfalfa annually and are used as pasture land for 2 draft horses. The applicants don't intend to subdivide the lands further at this time. However, future development plans do include the use of a large tent for events. The applicants have provided a business plan and operations outline, a calendar of annual events that they wish to host at the property, and a plan that describes visual screening, dust and noise mitigation related to the events they propose to host at the site. These plans have been posted on the county's website for adjacent landowners' consideration. And the applicants also submitted a transportation impact assessment to determine if improvements to the county's transportation network would be required to support the proposed development. The TIA was reviewed by the county's engineers, and no technical concerns were raised regarding servicing or access to the lands at this time. And I will provide further details on some of these technical aspects at the public hearing. The proposal generally aligns with relevant statutory and non-statutory policies, and the proposal was evaluated in accordance with municipal development plans, commercial and industrial development policies. Generally, the applicants have demonstrated that the proposal aligns with the criteria for single lot commercial development. Landowners and stakeholders within a 1 mile radius of the site were notified of the application, and 4 written submissions were received and have been included in the agenda package starting on page 28 for council's review. Administration has no concerns with the redesignation proceeding as proposed and recommends that council grant first reading of the bylaw and schedule a public hearing on October 17th in accordance with the motions provided on page 14 of the agenda package, which I have back on the screen here. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the RFD?
I'll move the council move first reading of bylaw 2023-23, this being a bylaw for the purpose of amending land use bylaw number 2016-01 to redesignate area K plan 9810989 from agricultural general district to rural business district as shown on the attached schedule A forming part of this bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried.
I'll move that public hearing for bylaw 2023-23 be scheduled for October 17th, 2023 at 11 a.m. in Wheeling County Council chambers.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. We'll move to agenda item 2.12.
Good morning, Council. Tracy from Administration. As you are aware, we have reviewed the procedure bylaw numerous times, once at a regular council meeting and at a committee of the whole. And I have since made a few changes since the committee of the whole that I'll just bring up. So on section 3, I added annual open houses means an opportunity for the public to engage in informal interactions with council members, facilitating discussions and gaining insights into various county initiatives twice per year. I also added section 14, divisional town hall means an opportunity for the public to meet with a counselor who represents their division. And at the organizational meeting, I added establish the dates and times of 2 annual open houses as discussed at the committee of the whole meeting. And also voting, section 114, number 5. If an electronic voting system is made available, all councillors must vote using the electronic voting system. I wasn't sure at that point if we'd have the system in place, but I think it works fine. And then recorded votes were also discussed. I left it as per our current procedure bylaw, and that council must request a recorded vote. So even though they are on the screen now, council still must request a recorded vote, and then that will go in the minutes. And administration made the following change, and that is to have a public hearing prior to first or second reading. So currently we have first reading, public hearing, and then second and third. Administration would like to have public hearing first before first or second reading. So that changes section 179. All that was removed is the public hearing will be held prior to second reading of the proposed bylaw or prior to a vote on the proposed resolution. So I removed after first reading in that section.
Yes, and just to elaborate on GM Buteau's point, it just provides flexibility for council. So if it is a contentious bylaw, then a public hearing can be held after the first reading, or just to potentially speed up processes as discussed at the special council meeting. Then we can just kind of move that process a little bit faster on non-contentious items. Thank you.
And in section 204, because of that change, section 204 was removed, and instead it states council shall not debate or make amendments to a bylaw that requires a public hearing under the MGA until after the public hearing has taken place. And the removal of following first reading was that was removed. There's also a clause that states administration schedules a public hearing, because often at the moment we there's a motion to schedule a public hearing, but administration will do that. And then you'll see it on the agenda. And those are the changes of the procedure bylaw since the review of the committee of the whole meeting. Any questions?
Any questions? I just have 2 questions.
Okay.
Would council consider on page 39 under 14, under divisional town hall, would council be open to an amendment to amend that to divisional town hall or open house? Just further to the comments around some of our other levels of government representatives that prefer an open house format versus the connotations that can come around to town hall.
I don't have an issue with that at all.
Good with that?
I think the definition can stay the same. It would just be semantics around just adding or open house after town hall. And then my second question is on page 46, number 76. And it's more just a practical question of how we will implement it. Before considering motions arising from a closed session, the chair of the meeting will provide reasonable notice to the public that the meeting is now open to the public and will allow sufficient time for the public to return to the meeting. And so pragmatically, I'm just curious if we have hybrid meetings, like in person would be very easy because somebody can just pop out, you know, into the hallway and say, council's back in open session and whoever would like to return to the meeting can. In a hybrid session, it's a little bit more challenging. I don't know if the only thought that I had is if we left that open line open and said that we would like return to that and notify anybody who has called in.
I was also thinking if you started the meeting and then just paused for a few minutes, just to allow staff to come back, start the meeting, and then just wait for a few minutes. We can also look on our website or even in eScribe to see if we can put like a formal notice if you'd rather that.
There just has to be some way to communicate to the public, because if you have phoned into the meeting and then we disconnect the open line, we just need to have some mechanism to notify the public that they could return.
Okay.
It's so uncommon, like that we even have public attendance, either in person or online. But in the event that there were a contentious issue that council needed to go into a closed session and then had motions arising, there may be members of the public who would want to hear those motions when we come out of closed session.
Okay. Another option is to state a time that you may start the meeting again. I think that's harder.
Yeah, it's so
Discussions,
challenging
that's
because you don't
very
want to
difficult.
limit council discussion and you don't want to waste council time by having to,
That's right.
if it's shorter.
We
We
can
don't
certainly-
need the solution right now. I'm just flagging it that, like, because in the procedure bylaw, we're indicating we'll do it. I think if we could work on some kind of mechanism to notify the public.
Yes, through the chair, what we should potentially do is leave this one with administration to potentially bring back to the next council meeting to give a concrete, I guess, solution on how to accommodate paragraph 76. We could do 1 or 2 bylaw readings today and then just make the amendments or make the amendments to the definition under point 14 and then also have a concrete plan for section 76 as well, and then come back with that plan if there are no other amendments and have third reading on October 3rd.
I'm even comfortable approving it as is, just with that minor, like with the addition of whatever that is, 3 words, or open house. If council's comfortable with that, we could maybe just put the amendment up on the screen. For me, the procedural bylaw, I don't think we would need to edit it with the mechanism. I think we could leave the procedure bylaw as is. And if administration could just bring back the mechanism that we would use to ensure that we're following section 76. Council's thoughts? I'm seeing heads nodding.
Yeah.
Just trying to think procedure wise, our tech group over there has the numbers of those people. If we'd have, phone them back, sometimes you're in camera for longer or shorter than you think, and then give a timeline, like 5-10 minutes, you've tried to phone people and then that's it, right? That's about the fairest way I could see it working, but.
Well, yeah, or if you leave the phone line open, they could just stay on and then you could say like council's returning in 5 minutes, and then anybody who is still, you'd be kind of silently listening. It's kind of like standing, I was trying to think of a parallel to standing or sitting in the hallway waiting, because I've done that in other meetings where you step outside and, you're waiting. But we could leave it with administration, they can come back. I just think as long as we have a mechanism and it's consistent and, and so we can communicate that to the public that if we move into a closed session, that, the phone line would be kept open, or there would be something on our website or something on eScribe, whatever it looks like, we'll leave that in administration's capable hands and go from there. Those are my only questions. Does anyone have any other questions or comments? Councillor Kester.
You made, made reference to town hall.
Yeah.
And being that you did, I'm looking in the definitions. I don't see a definition for town hall.
It's under divisional town hall, point 14. So I'm just
Oh, okay,
requesting the addition.
I just seen it now.
Yeah, you betcha. So just 3 words after that, divisional town hall or open house.
May I ask clarity on that? We changed the open house to annual open house, so it's still
This
an open house.
would be separate. All I'm requesting is that as a counselor, if I'm hosting a divisional event, that I could call it an open house.
I understand.
One of our colleagues, like that serves at another level of government, doesn't prefer the term town hall.
Okay.
They just prefer an open house style of engagement. And that's kind of conditional on, or their participation is conditional on structuring it to be conducive to the best opportunity for engagement. I know it's semantics and and I don't want it to be confusing with our council open house, but I think it can be very clear if it's a divisional town hall or a divisional open house versus a Wheatland County open house. Any other questions or concerns or discussion around the procedure bylaw? I do want to thank administration for your work on this and thank Kingsgate for their review as well. And just for the updates, I think they're practical. I think they'll help us conduct our meetings efficiently and effectively. And I appreciate the attention that went into it. Thank you. Would we be able to just get the wording so that council can see or open house? Is there a, sorry. So on our screens, it's showing the amendment, council's wishes.
I'll make the motion the council approves first reading of procedural bylaw 2023-03 as amended.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. And if we can, perfect. Motion is carried. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approve second reading of bylaw 2023-03.
Any questions or discussion? Councilor Kester.
I'm okay with first two readings, but if we're going to change it next meeting with the couple of additions, when you change a bylaw, you have to do 3 readings, and it would be much easier just to do 2 readings today. We could do it first part of the meeting, next meeting. I don't know if it's going to change our outcome of our meeting today, but I think that would be, we'll change it. We know what the changes are, but we haven't got staff's recommendation yet. Does that make sense? For me, I just assumed do 2 readings and then the 3rd reading after the amendment next meeting.
We can definitely do that. I think the only amendment that I'm requesting we consider is just the one that was put up on the screen, just the addition of the 3 words or open house. We can certainly defer if you want some time to consider that to the next meeting. But the section around the notification to the public, I think it's presented very well in the procedure bylaw. It's outlined that will be done. How that's done could be up to administration. And there is a chance that could be iterative depending on if the platform we're on changes or there's a different technology or that type of thing. So my preference would be for the mechanism not to be in the procedure bylaw, that would just be a process that we would establish, administration would establish that we would follow. It would be consistent in the sense that, we would apply the same mechanism to meetings unless new technology became available or a better solution or that type of thing. But from my perspective, I'd actually prefer it not be integrated into the procedure bylaw. But certainly we can, unless there's unanimous support for third reading, we could defer, but it's a very minor textual amendment. So if everybody's comfortable, we could contemplate third reading today. We had a motion for second reading. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is, oh, no.
I was seeing if that would carry on to another screen that I was watching. It doesn't, so I'm sorry I was late.
Okay. I don't see, oh, there we go. Motion is carried. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council grant permission to hold third and final reading of bylaw 2023-03.
All in favor? All in favor? Motion is not carried unanimously, so administration could bring third reading back for consideration to our next council meeting. We'll move to agenda item 2.41.
Good morning, Council. Brian from administration. On page 88 of your agenda package is the council resolution tracker for September 19th. As always, anything in green is deemed complete. Anything in yellow is deemed ongoing. The resolution tracker starts on page 91 of your agenda package. If there are any questions about the resolution tracker, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions for CAO Henderson? If not, council's wishes.
I'll move that council accept the council resolution tracker dated September 19th, 2023 as information.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.42.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian from administration. So in June, Council passed a resolution directing staff to provide in-kind services to other municipalities and not-for-profits that the county has provided to other municipalities or groups. So administration's thought process behind this is that we're going to present this to council on a quarterly basis. And on page 102 of your, or 101 of your agenda package is the actual resolution with the description of any, the receiving organization, the event, the dates that it occurred, and the estimated value of those in-kind services. If there are any questions about this report, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions for CAO Henderson?
I'll move that council accepts the county in-kind donations update Q2 2023 report as information.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the, oh,
Just a question on there was an event, like a council run on June 21st or something like that, 21st, 22nd. I believe I just don't know if that, I believe we did some policing on, I was away, so I'm not sure about that. The Enbridge.
What I can do is I can confirm the dates. And one thing in this report as well is that We do only up to Q2, so the cutoff would be June 30th. And it may have occurred after, but if not, I can definitely find out.
Yeah.
Council will continue
It was
getting this
It
report
was
with,
after. My apologies, it was after, sorry.
and we'll keep updating this on a quarterly basis, so council has an annual running total of the in-kind donations, and that's our intent to bring this forward. So, thank you.
My bad.
Any other questions regarding the report? Council's wishes. Oh, I think actually Councillor Laprise already moved. My apologies. Call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.43, reserves policy update.
Morning, Council. Joel from Corporate Services here. Just bear with me one moment. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint here. Let's move this a bit closer. I'm still short. Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to present this proposed policy change for the reserves this morning. I was just going to walk through just briefly a few items just as a refresher, kind of like what reserves are and what we're looking at, and then a quick summary of the kind of our current reserve balances and how to interpret that. And then finally, just a brief discussion about the amendments being proposed in the policy and the philosophy behind that and how we came to kind of realize that. So when council enacts policies to set aside funds for specific purposes, these are internally restricted. Another way to view this is council's intentionally setting aside or designating portions of its surplus. Surplus doesn't have to be internally restricted through policy. It can be unrestricted as well. The county does have a portion of that, as I'll show you in a minute. Sorry, I'll go to the next slide here. So here we have our current reserve status. This is all of our last 5 years of completed audited financial statements and the results around that. You can see on the orange bar, maybe it might be a little difficult to read, but the orange bar represents internally restricted surplus, which is the reserve policies. Those are kind of the policy that we're talking about today, the aspects that council sets aside for specific purposes. And the blue bar represents the unrestricted surplus, which is that which is not set aside intentionally through policy. So for the next slide, we're going to show a breakdown and example of what supports both of these surplus values, the unrestricted and the restricted, and how that looks on the 2022 financial statements. And just to summarize here, you can see in the last fiscal year, the 50 million in policy reserves and the 28. So that would be this 78 million total in surplus, essentially. So here I have a breakdown of the composition as of December 31st, 2022 of that $78 million of total surplus. You can see that some of the components of the surplus are not useful in the sense of, or the context of restricted reserves. That would be like funding expenditures that require like a cash payment or a cash equivalent value. That is to say that there isn't value for the other parts of this or the other components. And a good example would be that inventory for consumption, which is mainly our gravel value that we hold. That's not a cash value, but it provides excellent value to the county in terms of road construction and all of the assets that we use gravel for. So the idea of internally restricted reserves, or the policy reserves we're looking at today, is typically that council has planned for setting aside liquid assets for future use. For example, in 2022, at the end of the year, the $50 million of the total balance of policy reserves is only a proportion of, or around 80% of the total cash and investment value that was on the books at that time. I suppose before I proceed to the next section, is there any questions or comments from council? Okay. So some of the philosophy or approach with amending the reserve, or how it was informed, is we reviewed the existing reserves internally with staff and managers, operating managers, initially, just to ask questions about if there was things that were required by regulations or just even historics behind some of the items, so we could be better informed with that. We also did research for other municipalities across Alberta. I do have just kind of a brief list of some of them here. It would include Strathcona County, Rocky View, Red Deer County, the City of Calgary, Newell, the town of Strathmore just recently did a brand new reserve policy as well, so we did some referencing on that. And then finally, finance staff attended reserve coursework to check for best practices. Some of the best practices included ensuring that the restricted reserves as a total do not surpass the cash investment balance of the municipality, which is kind of what we just sort of briefly discussed in the last slide. And then outlining specific reserve details in an attached table format. And that's much like the fees and charges table that we refer to. It's kind of the same approach, and that's what we found. A lot of these other municipalities, they do that reserves in that way. They list off the specifics in a table. So we found the current policies, which you're, I'm sure, well aware. There are 36 individually administered policies that encompass almost 40 pages. There's some redundancies and unnecessary information within them. And so then we have kind of a list here of why, or some of the reasons for doing the proposed new policy. Essentially, in summary, it provides a modernized framework that will be easier to administer. The timing works well as the county plans for upcoming asset management and long-term financial planning data. And the newly proposed Schedule A table that outlines specific details for reserves. It reduces the policy down to 10 pages, so about a quarter of the size. So that's it for, I guess, the formal part of my presentation. Is there any other questions before I proceed?
Councillor Larson.
So how does this amended policy then align with other similar municipalities then? Is it similar in length and content?
Yes, through the council. It is very similar in terms of size and the methodology. So there's kind of a section on general administrative aspects of it, and maybe how those specific line items within the table, like the information that are required to create a reserve, to council reserve. So that's kind of part of the general aspect. And then there's the table itself, which outlines all the specific reserves, whether it be paved roads or bridges, and how those are treated itself. So it's very much in line with what we're seeing as kind of more updated policies out in the marketplace.
Any other questions so far? Perfect.
Sorry, I'll just quickly just review the package that was provided within the report itself, just so you can get a bearing on all of the attachments. There was quite a bit. So the first thing, we have the individual current policies for your reference. Those were extensive and they end on page 150 of your package. Of course, this is the presentation as well. So I will just zoom forward here. The next attachment for the next, I believe, 4 pages was the summary of the policy changes by kind of breaking it down in a narrative format for each policy and what's been changed with that. The next section is the schedule for the new draft policy, outlining all of the individual reserves. And what we did here, it was we included separately and highlighted them as well, just for reference to see what items had changed. So if you didn't see an area that was highlighted, effectively we just took the wording from the 40-page policy that we had and just inserted it into the table format. And so that you can kind of refer to this as well as the narrative document, which would cover off these yellow highlighted sections. And then finally, the draft policy itself, which was 4 pages, and the included table attachment with that, which would be 6 pages. And that's concludes this. Staff are available for any questions.
Any questions regarding the amended policy?
I thought it was great to see like a kind of more streamlined policy. I have questions, I guess, and maybe they aren't about just changing this policy so it's more readable. Maybe it's more about a discussion about reserves. I'm not sure. I noticed that some, I'm just trying to find, so Clunie Community Infrastructure and all of the other Gleason Community Infrastructure say funded by donations from within the hamlet. Can you give me an example of what that would be? Like how does money accumulate in those accounts?
Yes, through to council, I know in my research on them, and Brian might have some more historics because I haven't been here as long, but their balances that have been in there for an extended period of time, and we were just kind of carrying them over to ensure that they still have the same structure and criteria around them. Not sure if Brian has anything to add to that though.
Would you just be able to reference the policy? Sorry, I was just kind of struggling to find the exact one you were.
Exactly.
I think historically there were examples where like a resident may pass away and they may leave like a gift to the county that would go into a reserve. And so I think it's just keeping those monies earmarked with the intentions that they were bequeathed with.
Okay, or also it did occur to me with Joel's explanation that maybe when Gleason was absorbed into Wheatland County, maybe there was some funds they held that could have gone into this account, maybe?
Yes, there could have been. I do, as for Clunie, I don't recall any since I've been here for 7 years. I know I think it may have been 2018 or 2017, a resident of Gleason passed away and she had left, or at least partial some of her wealth to the county. We renamed a road after her. It was Prowse, I think that was her last name. I don't recall, but I know that was one donation for sure, and that was in the hamlet of Gleason.
So then just to follow up, in our restrictions and other criteria, it says, so I'm looking at policy number 7, I guess, Clunie Community. So funds may be used for engineering, design, construction costs for community halls and other facilities. It says funding will only be provided for up to 50% of the total project costs for the project with other non-county. Why would we restrict it to 50%? if it's a community gift. I don't know. And so maybe this is a discussion for a different day. I don't know. I'd like another question, just to decide whether this should be held over for something else. Policy number 11 and 12. 11 is for fleet vehicles and equipment. And it says it is funded through property tax revenue and any net proceeds from disposed vehicles or equipment. And then policy 12 is municipal facility infrastructure. And it also says property tax revenue and any net proceeds from disposed vehicles or equipment. So I'm just wondering if there's maybe the facility infrastructure is meant to be property tax or net proceeds from land sales or facility sales, not vehicles or equipment. There's just a few little things like that. And then in a few places we talk about how things will be funded by property tax, but in some cases there's a limit or a target, but in some cases there's no restrictions or on it. So I don't know how we would decide how much goes into those reserves every year.
Can administration just speak to the process that you go through with your senior leadership team, like during budget time when you're determining like allocation of transfers to reserves and how you target those? Because you're right, like some, I think we do have parameters, and council does need to be clear that I think how I look at it is where we're setting like a target or a ceiling, that's council direction. And then what I'm envisioning is where there isn't specific council direction, we would be looking to administration to use their expertise to determine what would be transferred in. And then council would be reviewing that at budget time when all of the reserve totals are brought to council for review. And we always have an opportunity at that time for discussion or for direction as well. If we feel like a reserve is growing too large, or if we feel like we need to, I suspect as we're doing our asset management, as that is built out, that plan, we will have, and the presentation referenced that as well. I think we will have a clearer direction with some of our reserves. It's a good question, like if each reserve should have a target, but maybe if administration can just speak if flexibility is helpful or.
Yeah, I'd say that the county's not in a situation in the last, say, like 5 years where we've been squirreling away lots of money or have the opportunity to really bolster up reserves. I'd say on an annual basis, we do, like as we review the budget, we do take a look at expenditures and try to make sure that certain reserves don't go down super low, or if there are reserves that we do have that aren't really utilized or just old, we kind of just draw those down on certain items and just get them kind of to a point where they're zero, then we can kind of close that reserve or recommend to council to close that reserve. We do typically just look at spending on various assets. So a big one for the county is just vehicles and equipment, just because the county has such a large road network, and that's a big one, and roads as well. So those are the ones that typically see transfers in the most, and we do a lot of them from sale of equipment. That's a big one as well. So yeah, and lately the reserve that has grown the most has been the Lakes of Muirfield, and that we have very strict criteria on what to kind of put in there as well. And I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, there's a couple other ones that have very specific council policies behind funding. So fire is a good one. Fire capital, it's 0.25 of a mil, I believe, or maybe 0.2. I'd have to take a look at the exact amount. It actually is probably in the policy. Yeah, that's just off the top of my head. So yeah, I'd say it comes down to professional judgment. We take a look at future budget, what kind of comes in, what comes out. But there's lots of flexibility in there, which is nice. But it's also good for council to have some limits and parameters on the reserves. And a lot of them have been previously set, so administration just follows those. Thank you.
I'm just wondering if this is I like this format for it. If we have just maybe a community or when we have a committee of the whole to add numbers and expenses to this format for each reserve to get a better understanding and kind of go through the restrictions? I don't know. Just a thought. Closer to budget time.
So bring the reserve table, like with the totals back with the policy and show what the targets and the ceilings would look like in each reserve. That's a good idea.
a better understanding.
Yeah.
Because honestly, going forward with the budget, you're not looking at reserves and you're not looking at the restrictions or anything. You're just looking at a number net at that time. If we just brought them together.
So sort of that last column, the restrictions and other criteria. So for example, if it said 25% of the total annual capital budget, we would have like the current reserve and then what that would look like.
Yeah.
Councillor Laprise, were your questions answered
Yeah, and
sufficiently?
I think I agree with Councillor Baker that it would be good to just review close to budget time, just as a separate, an extra part of it, just to see where we're sitting and making sure that what we have in reserves is appropriate. And yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion?
I'll move that council approve rescinding financial reserves policy 2.9.1 through to 2.9.36 and replacing with reserves policy 2.9.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or, excuse me, any questions or discussion? Call the question. Motion is carried. Just one question before we make this motion. I noticed that Carsland was specifically referenced for that reserve. We had a previous Gleason as well. Would that need the same?
I believe that Gleason
Okay, I
one
had it
may have
on.
been used.
That's, I couldn't remember the balance
Yeah.
of it.
I believe it may have been used. One sec, I can see if I can pull up the financial statement as of right now.
Sorry if I may, yeah, there's a zero balance in there. And that's why, so we've just included the reserves that actually had a monetary balance.
Perfect. Yeah. I meant to ask that earlier. So thank you. Perfect.
And just for historical context, the reason why that reserve may have been there, either for two reasons. One, it used to be an association, then turned into a department when Gleason was amalgamated into the county when they requested that. And or two, it could have been through a donation, but I'm almost certain that it would have been just because it used to be an association that turned into a department.
Deputy Reeve Glasson.
Just wondering if this has been discussed with like the fire chiefs and whatnot prior to this, so he's not going to hit the media and something that, it's been, everybody's fully aware why we're doing this.
Yes, and I had a specific or a conversation with Chief Borgon about that one as well. And he had that conversation.
And there was support for the change. Yeah, good question. Thank you.
With that, I'll move that council approve upon closing of the professional development and Carsland Fire Department's reserves, transferring the respective balances to the operating continuity and fire capital reserves.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Yeah, let's take 5 minutes. We will, actually, let's just take 10. Let's reconvene at 10:10. Thank you.
You have been muted. To unmute yourself, press the star key twice. Mute off.
Good morning. We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll move to agenda item 2.44, updated 2023 property tax statistics.
Morning again, Council. Joel from Corporate Services here to talk through briefly our updated statistics. I can stop discussing these boring policies and procedures and talk about some math. So if you'll recall at the August 15th meeting, we had presented some general collectability statistics. This report is effectively, we're presenting those in the blue and orange bars. They're the exact same information as before. And there was a request to include information about the December 31st or the year end collective or total collected into that graph as well, just to kind of get, I guess, a better sense of how things looked in that context. So we've included that in the graph within this report, and that's represented by these gray bars. Something to note, as everyone is aware, the 2020-21 kind of period is the COVID period, and there was also some economic issues and all of those other things that came into play. So the collectability rate was substantially higher in that year. The other thing that drives potentially this as well is the fact that in the 2020 year, we had a special or a regular due date for the property taxes. I believe it was August 31st, as opposed to the standard June date that we have every year. So there was less time between the regular due date and the end of the year there as well. So that could also explain that variance. But we can also see by the 2022 that things kind of return to what would appear to be kind of a normalcy. In addition to that, we've also included a graph on the arrears portion of taxes. The information that we had presented before was just the annual tax bill and then the amount that was collected based on that levy for that year, whereas the arrears represents prior year taxes and accumulation of kind of what is outstanding and owing to the county. Again, with this one in 22, we can see a kind of a positive break in the trend that it was going up. So that's a good thing. And that concludes this information. Staff are available for any questions.
Any questions regarding the updated property tax information? I think this was fantastic. Creates a really clear picture of just the conditions over the last 5 years and the trends, and was excellent. Thank you. Council's wishes.
I move that council accepts the updated 2023 property tax statistics report as information.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Come back. No worries. Motion is carried. Thank you for your work on that. We'll move to agenda item 2.45.
Good morning, Council. Dave from Administration. On page 175 of your agenda package is a report for the Clooney Community Hall lease agreement. The lease agreement's with the Clooney Community Hall Society that managed the community hall for a number of years, and their current lease of 5 years is expiring on November 30th of 2023. Attached in the package is a lease agreement that's been signed off by the Hall Board Society, and I'm available for any questions. The lease agreement as well is updated to our kind of current standard of lease agreement for these situations.
Any questions for administration? Council's wishes. Oh, sorry, Councilor Larson.
I'll move that council accept the lease agreement with the Clooney Community Hall Society for the use of the building located at 320 2nd Street, Clooney, as a community hall for a 5-year term at the rate of $1 per year, and direct the Reeve and Chief Administrative Officer to sign the lease agreement.
Any questions or discussion?
I'll just say that that society has done amazing work in Clooney, and the residents in the area take very good care of the hall. They have regular cleaning beats, and it's a great facility in the area. So it's a great thing to have this.
Absolutely. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.46.
Dave from administration again. The report in front of you for the Wheatland Shores Campground request for capital improvements. Council reviewed on August 15th a request for in correspondence for the tenant requesting some capital improvements. Council asked administration to bring back a report on how the information that was presented for those capital improvements kind of worked with the lease agreement. So administration has prepared a report outlining some of the highlights from the lease agreement that apply kind of in this situation or these requests. Also provided a summary of where we're kind of at with some of the improvements that's been done to date. And some summary of the tenant requests. Don't really provide a lot of the details on estimates on, like, for example, like store improvements, like what size, or like some of the improvements aren't really nailed down to exactly what those asks are. So administration is recommending that more work is done on providing exactly what those costs will be and what the improvements would be, as well as a cost sharing formula. In the summary, in the second paragraph, it does say resolution option 2. That was when we were crafting the report, that area got missed. We just put it down to one kind of resolution. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that error in that report. But other than that, I'm available for any questions on this report.
Any questions? If no questions, council's wishes.
I'll move that council direct administration to follow up with the Wheatland Shores Campground tenant to have them submit a detailed proposal that clearly identifies scope of work with estimated costs, and a cost-sharing proposal as specified in the lease agreement for council's consideration.
Any questions or discussion? Council's wishes, or all in favor, sorry. Motion is carried. Thank you for your work on that. We'll move to agenda item 2.47.
Good morning, I'm Suzanne Hayes, Development Officer with Wheatland County. This request is for an extension for DP 2016-110 for recreational vehicle storage. There is a location plan on page 203. This is located along the west side of the Lakes of Muirfield, approximately 360 meters north of Township Road 251A, on the east side of Range Road 265. The same page, we can just see an aerial photo where the parcel is there. And on page 204, there is a closer up aerial photo and a site plan. So this item considers a 12-month time extension for this DP, which was originally approved for the RV storage in September of 2016. And it ceased to operate on September 30th, 2022, when the county assumed ownership of the development. The bylaw states that if a use ceases to operate for 12 consecutive months, it shall be considered void and a new application would be required. The County Master Schedule of Fees stipulates a development extension may be granted once, and this is the first request for this permit. The original permit is attached on page 205 if council wishes to review it. Changes in lot ownership do not cause a development permit to cease as long as the new owner operates in the same manner as was originally approved, or if changes are less intensive than the original plan. The county's intention is to lease the site and have the RV storage lot continue to operate as it was originally, with one exception. They did originally propose to open it up to members of the public as well as owners in the Lakes of Muirfield. And at this time, the plan is that it would only be leased to residents of the Lakes of Muirfield. So that's a less intensive option. The county recently hired McElhaney Engineering to review the original stormwater management plan to ensure it aligned with the overall design for the Lakes of Muirfield, and it was determined that the RV site was not developed according to the original approved plan, and a new design would be more effective and in line with the overall plan. So the county will be making the changes to the site so it aligns with the overall Lakes of Muirfield development. So staff are recommending that on page 200, we can see staff's recommendation, which is that council approve this extension, allowing the permit to remain active and recommence operating the RV storage at some time prior to September 19th, 2024. And council has the standard 3 response options, which are found on page 201. Please let me know if you have questions.
Any questions? Councillor Larson, then Deputy Reeve Clausen.
So just help me understand so this is strictly for the Lakes of Muirfield residents. County people can't use it. So what's the benefit to the county and what is it costing us to do this?
I may just defer to Bryce, who has the next item on the agenda, for some of those questions. I can't tell you what the benefit is to the county about allowing only Lakes of Muirfield residents. I'm only speaking from the development permit perspective.
Yeah, please.
Bryce from administration, to answer through the chair. It's the clause about not renting outside of the community is to be in alignment with similar leases that we carry with other associations. That is strictly the only reason that it's in there. Okay. And I believe that, excuse me, I believe those clauses were put in place as the property will be leased below market value to the nonprofit association. And so we do not want to have the appearance of competing with similar businesses close by. I believe that was the intention of why that clause was put in the original leases with similar associations.
Okay, that's fine. Now, how much is that costing the county to do that? Like, is that funded through, if it's funded through the ratepayers of the Lakes of Muirfield, that's one thing. If the county is paying for it through other ratepayers, that's a different question.
Through the chair, just maybe some clarity on paying for.
Well, it sounds like we have to do some stormwater management stuff. What is there is are they paying the county actually any money for this lease, or is it a dollar lease and we could do better by selling the land or something else?
Yes, through the chair, this is a similar to other leases with associations. It is for $1. As far as the land itself and the improvements that are required in order to operate this property, it is our responsibility as a property owner, so we will be upfronting those any costs associated with it. With the current or the new updated stormwater management plan, the work is intended to be completed with internal forces. It mostly consists of grading and dirt work for the site, just to get proper grades and levels, and with some minor adjustments to 2 existing manholes that are on sites. So I can't comment to how much that costs. I'm still waiting for some more information on that.
But it'll come out of the county's general funds, correct?
Yes, through the chair. So it most likely would, unless council directs us to put it from another spot.
I can provide a little bit better clarification for that. So this site was, the developer previous to the county taking it over ran the site. It was approved, developed and approved through the county. Since we've taken ownership of it, I guess the best way to put it is we found out that it wasn't developed to the standard that was out there. However that happened, we don't know. So the community still wants to utilize the site for revenue generation, and it's not the HOA, it is the Lyalta Community Center. Just so you're aware of that. So in my opinion, it will provide a way for the community center to generate some revenue similar to what we do in Speargrass. The site is still a recreational area, a recreational vehicle storage, and has been empty now for almost a year. I know the community group definitely wants to utilize it. They would love to have other people come in and store there other than county residents, but it's our bylaw that is restricting that. The other question I had was, because we are the developer, are we charging ourselves the $200, or who's paying that? Because it can't be.
Through the REIT, that would just be a non-monetary transaction, but it would have to be recorded nonetheless.
Okay, fair enough, because yeah, we are the developer in this situation, and we're extending our own permit. Okay, so I'll make the motion that council approve the extension for development permit DP 2016-110, allowing it to remain active and recommence operating the recreational vehicle storage lot prior to September 19th, 2024.
I'll speak in support of the motion. I think that having on-site or proximal RV storage can contribute to beautification of one of our hamlets. And I think it's, if you look at sort of the ripple effect of that, the more attractive our hamlets are, I think that can help mitigate ag fragmentation if we can sort of focus residential development into hamlets. And maybe minimize the number of country residential subdivisions that we're looking at, redesignations and taking ag land out. And because we are able to do it with internal capacity that we have, we do expend that throughout the county within our hamlets for different endeavors. So I do support using our resources to do that. We do at times use those resources outside of our municipality as well, but obviously this is within one of our communities, so I think it's important. And I also just wanted to say I support the restriction to the Lakes of Muirfield residents, and for the rationale that was already presented by administration. I don't think as a municipal government we should be competing with private sector business opportunities. Other questions or discussion? Councillor Baker.
Just another benefit is the it takes away the wanting to have your RV parked on your lot for the whole summer. It's really helped with Speargrass to because there is a bylaw that you're not allowed to do that. So that's just another benefit.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I meant for beautification, because then you don't have RVs, lining the streets of a hamlet. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
A little bit further too, we did operate this as the county for a period of time, and it became cost negative to do this. So it's, in my opinion, it's great that the the community wants to look after it. So it's the initial investment of cleaning up storm drainage that should have been done right the first time, but whatever, we're there now. We're going to fix it up. And then this will be looked after by the community for very similar to Speargrass, and provides an amenity that was already in place prior to the county taking over that. And then again, the developer heavily subsidized that to build it. I imagine there was a couple $100,000 in gravel that was put into there by the developer. So it's to me, it's a win-win, and it will provide some funding through the community center for long term. And I know that definitely the residents in the area are very much taking the bull by the horns and with Lyle to Community Hall and trying to get some things and update it and things like that. So this is just kind of a way to support that.
Good questions, good discussion. Any other questions or debate? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.49. And I will just provide a little bit of context around the request. And I'm just going to really quickly, sorry, I thought I hit send and I bet I didn't.
To the chair, maybe a point of order just for Bryce to let him know that 2.8 is deferred till 11 o'clock.
Oh, yes, I'm very sorry. We scheduled 2.48 for 11 o'clock just because there was a request for some interested ratepayers to know when they could join the meeting to hear that agenda item. My apologies.
That's okay. I was here for the last one.
Thank you, Councillor LaPrice. Thank you. So we will move back to that at 11 a.m. Thank you, Councillor LaPrice. Yes. I have just circulated a draft proposed amendment to the review of affordable housing funding programs resolution that council approved at our last meeting. That was taken, it was sent by administration to District 2 to Rocky View County, that disseminated it to the District 2 Resolution Committee. They met and they review all of the resolutions for the district. There was a request at that meeting. Sorry, I'll just pull out my notes. At the District 2 Resolution Committee meeting, it was asked that we consider adding some context to the background section of our resolution regarding the last therefore be it resolved. And that's the therefore be it resolved that references the scalable, replicable, modular design. It was indicated this amendment does not need to go back to the committee, but could be submitted to Rocky View County prior to the September 29th deadline for inclusion in the district meeting agenda package. Then I have circulated some wording. So essentially, Chair Harris just asked that we provide a little bit more context of what we mean around that scalable, replicable design and the rationale for it. So the proposed amendment drafted is, in light of the pressing need to expand affordable housing options in Alberta, it is imperative that we take a page from the playbook of Premier Peter Lougheed's era of efficient hospital construction. During that time, Alberta saw significant capital investment in healthcare facilities with a focus on streamlined design that was replicated in about 20 builds across various communities. This standardization facilitated timely approval of construction-ready projects, eliminating the need to expend tax dollars on multiple sets of pre-design, schematic design, design development, and architectural construction documents for each new facility. We are requesting applying similar methodology to affordable housing project construction. Utilizing such a process could not only save millions of dollars per project, but it could also expedite construction timelines and slash bureaucratic red tape surrounding funding allocation. As we consider adopting a similar approach, it is crucial that extensive engagement be conducted to ensure that the new scalable modular designs meet the diverse and evolving needs of Albertans now and into the future. And I would propose to add that prior to the second last paragraph of the resolution, just before a streamlined and predictable grant application process. Any questions or thoughts?
Just clarification, this is for the AHPP, the Affordable Housing Partnership Program. This includes the seniors as well, like some of the proposed builds in the area. But also this is for just affordable housing in general. So I definitely support this. I've talked to modular builders recently, and there's this some shift that's coming. It's a fast way to provide affordable housing. Modular homes, I've lived in one, they're absolutely fantastic. The design are really good, and every year they keep going, it keeps getting better. So it's a way to modular, they can build R1 style housing in cubes and put it together very efficiently now. So it's and it's a controlled environment where it's built and has good quality control. So I support this. And it's cost effective, sorry.
Yeah, and to your question, yes, it would, because the Alberta Housing Partnership Program does apply to all affordable housing. I think council's rationale was that we would address it in a more broad manner because rural municipalities are often more focused on seniors affordable housing through our housing management bodies. We do make reference in another section of the resolution more specific to that. A concept like this could be applied to different focused areas of affordable housing, whether it was there's multiple areas or ideas that it could be. But I think it's just more the general concept of if there could be sort of that pre-design work done that could be utilized by different bodies or different nonprofits or that type of thing throughout the province. Do we feel like this captures what Chair Harris was requesting?
I do feel it does. And I would just like to say too, just that, yeah, given the critical need for just a massive influx of affordable housing, I think it's the best way to go to do it efficiently and to save money. I mean, it will cost billions and billions if every municipality looks at different, starting from scratch. It's just, I don't even see it. It's inconceivable. So I think if the government took this, it would be a huge win, huge win.
Do we need a motion to support?
So I would, there's one there. If somebody would like to make it.
I'll make the motion that council approve the amendments to review of affordable housing funding programs, RMA resolution.
Questions or discussion? Call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.410. I received correspondence from the Legion in Strathmore, and I'll just read the media release. Since the 1980s, the annual observance of National Legion Week is designed to educate visitors on the excellent work the local branch does in the community. It reinforces the significant role the Strathmore branch plays in our shared mission to serve and support our local veterans, as well as contribute to the well-being of many in our community. Feel free to drop in to have a look at military history or enjoy a beverage and meal. Become a member and/or sign up to volunteer during Poppy Week at one of our other fundraising events. This year, it can also include a salute to our CMP veterans who celebrated the 150th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So National Legion Week is celebrated from September 17th to 23rd. And I would move that council support National Legion Week by sharing it on our website and our social media channels, and that we recognize our veterans and their service to our country and to Wheatland County. Any questions or discussion?
I'll move that council declare September 17th to the 23rd to 2023 as National Legion Week in Wheatland County.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.411. This week is the Community Futures Network of Alberta Symposium in St. Paul. I do have some other meeting commitments during the majority of the symposium, but there is an awards evening and some programming on Thursday evening. And there is a AGM where Prairies Can, our representatives from the federal government, and at times last year we did have an ADM from Prairies Can that attended as well, who oversees the Community Futures funding for Alberta. And so I'm requesting council ratify my attendance. It would just be, I'll already be in Nisku, so it would be mileage just from Nisku to St. Paul and then home. No hotel expenses, and there would just be the per diems for the portion that I'm able to attend. And I'll be as conservative as possible. Council's wishes.
I'll move to ratify the Reeves attendance at the Community Futures AGM.
Community Futures Network of Alberta.
Network of Alberta.
It may be a portion of the symposium and AGM. Councillor Bigger has moved. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. I don't believe we had any correspondence today. To do what? Is that the only one, or will there be others? We'll just recess for 1 minute.
You have been muted. To unmute yourself, press the star key twice. Off.
We will reconvene the meeting. I would like to ask if anyone from council objects to moving the 11 a.m. appointment that we scheduled for the Muirfield RV storage lot lease agenda item to deal with that now. Does anybody object? Not seeing any objection, we can proceed. We'll move to agenda item 2.48.
Good morning. Bryce Mackin, Manager of Technical Services, presenting the Muirfield RV storage lot lease. Some of this information was previously covered under the previous presentations, so I will try and just add in any new information. Administration has been working with the Lakes of Muirfield Homeowners Association as well as the Lyalta Community Club on a potential lease agreement for the RV lot, as we've discussed. This lease that is being presented is similar to other leases the county holds with similar organizations. As mentioned in the previous presentation regarding the development permit, it was identified that the site had not completed one of the conditions of the permit, that being the stormwater management plan. So we have completed a revised version, which I believe is on page 212. Oops, that's pretty big. That identifies some of the grading and adjustments to the manholes that need to be done to make this site compliant with a new stormwater management plan. This management plan was created to maximize the number of leasable spots within the site, or rentable spots within the site. Site grading and adjustments, as mentioned before, will be completed by internal forces. Let's return back. As part of the negotiations with the lease agreement, there were a couple of terms discussed that we didn't include in the lease agreement, but are bringing forward as part of the presentation. One request was to replace any dead trees that are currently on the property Administration is agreeable to removing the dead trees on the property and will replace any that we believe have a good probability of survival based on the existing conditions. The second consideration that is outside would be that the LCC, or Lyalta Community Club, has also requested that property taxes be waived for the first 2 years of the lease agreement. This request is to help the LCC ensure that the RV lot lease does not become a burden to the community club if RV rentals are not enough to cover costs. There's a brief description of a split of how the property taxes are associated on that property in the following. I won't go through it all, but it is something that council can consider under MGA section 3471. If council approved a temporary cancellation of taxes associated with the RV lot for the Lyalta Community Club, it should only be applied to the municipal portion. Council is obligated to meet the education requisition liability as requested by the province and collected on their behalf, and therefore does not have any effective ability to cancel this portion. Possible wording for a resolution to cancel municipal taxes for a period of little more than 2 years is provided below in the response options section of this report. Otherwise, we are recommending, the recommendation from administration is that council authorize the REIV and chief and the CAO to sign the agreement with the Lyalta Community Club for the lease of the Muirfield RV lot. That is the presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report? Council's wishes.
I'd like to make the motion that council authorize the REIV and the chief administrative officer to sign the agreement with the Lyalta Community Club for the lease of Lot 2, Block 9, Plan 1513169 for the operation of our RV storage facility, subject to the conditions of the lease agreement and development permit 2016-110.
Any questions or discussion? Call the question. Motion is carried. Thank you. We will move to closed session.
I still want to do one more.
Oh.
Yeah, we've got the waiving of taxes.
Oh, sorry. There's a second motion.
I don't see a motion there.
It's down in the,
There was an option
where did it go?
in the package.
Just to council through the REIV, it wasn't at the end, but there is at the bottom of the report. If council wanted to consider that and make that motion, there is the wording for a motion down towards the bottom of the report.
The bottom on page 208, just above implications of recommendation.
Okay. Make the motion that council approve the cancellation of municipal portion of property tax payments for 2023, 2024, and 2025 tax year as per MGA section 347, subsection 1 from the Lyalta Community Club associated with their lease of Lot 2, Block 9, Plan 1513169, roll number 9455014.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Any questions or discussion?
I'd like that.
Just had a question if that's the same with other renters that we've had.
To council through the REIV, to my knowledge, this would be out of precedent for what council has done for other leasers or leasees or community associations.
Just through council as well. There are other instances where council does waive the municipal portion of taxes, and that was at previous campgrounds. Now it's just down to one. But what it was for lease improvement or land improvements that were done by the leasee. So I think it might be High Eagle Campground that they would provide. They do repairs and maintenance to the land itself. They provide council with those receipts, and then council would waive the municipal portion of taxes.
Deputy Roof
My reasoning for this is to help them get up and running. This has been a site that was operable from a private entity that we were collecting taxes on. Then we took it all over as the county, shut it down, and those people have gone everywhere. So now they got to build back a clientele again, and they can only utilize within their own community to build back a revenue. That subdivision is not fully built out yet. It is about less than half of size, so that the chances of them filling it up right away are pretty slim. That is my reasoning for this, and it is the Lyalta Community Club is a non-for-profit organization that is running it. So it's a kind of unique situation. I'm really happy that this is moving forward. It is something that I think is takes it off our plate, puts it onto them, and gives them some funding. So essentially, you're taxing a non-for-profit, and I realize Speargrass pays taxes on theirs right now, but with the circumstances of how this one played out, that's why I asked for this.
Any other questions or discussion? I can see a rationale for support of the motion based on the fact that the Homeowners Association is providing significant volunteerism in terms of taking over the running of the lot and to build that back up, like you said, basically from ground zero after not being in operation. And I do appreciate the Homeowners Association's volunteers' commitment to taking that on and all of the work that they do in Muirfield. I know they've been putting in significant time addressing concerns and issues and contributing and collaborating on making Muirfield the best community that it can be. And I think this is one way that we can consider contributing to the success of this and to Muirfield. Any other questions or discussion?
I guess.
Councillor Eichert, then Councillor Laprise.
I'm just, so is everybody that is a member of the Homeowners Association, are they a member of the Lyalta Community Club?
So I can speak to that. The HOA at their last meeting, or one of the previous meetings, so they bought a membership for everybody that is part of Muirfield in the Lyalta Community Club. And that is a fair chunk of money. Plus, they've also allocated funds. I don't want to quote exactly. I believe it was another 10 or 20,000 they're going to give to operate that facility. So they've taken the HOA fees and basically bought them a membership in the Lyalta Community Club for everybody there.
Okay, thank you. No, the reason I'm asking is it is such a good thing to see somebody investing time and energy into our community associations. We're running into, it's a common occurrence where all the work that was done by our preceding generations has sort of been, we live in a busy society and people don't realize how important community clubs are. So yeah, well, thank you very much. It's great to see that this is going to, I believe, will breathe a lot of life into Lyalta's community. So thank you.
And I just wanted to say that I guess I would support this just because, well, for one reason that it, I'm reading here, considering the generated revenues are planned to support future community initiatives. So it's not like this money is going into private. It's going to be reinvested in the community. And so for that reason, I would be supporting it.
Yes, it's definitely breathing new life into a community hall. That was, and I know because I've been at the board meetings previously, it was struggling, especially after COVID. They've had a major repair on a roof that they actually had to borrow money for from Community Futures, and they're still paying that off, and it's going to take a while. But this is an injection of cash from the community to them. I'm speaking specifically the HOA to Lyalta Community Club. So that gives them some ownership of the Lyalta LCC, plus this LCC is looking after the RV lot, which provides them a range of funding. So it's kind of multi-layered, but I think it sets them up for success. And of course, with new life on a board, there may be some changes coming there for recreation, which they are pretty aggressive, which is good. And this will provide them some funding. And of course, they may come back to us for an ask in the future, but we'll deal with that as it comes.
And I do support this. I just think that come the 3 years, it should be back to normal practices for the whole.
At this time, I have no intention of bringing this forward past this.
Any other questions or discussion? Call the question. Motion is carried. I'll now move us into a closed session to address items regarding Goldfinch Industrial Park Road development, disclosure harmful to economic and other interests of a public body regarding a land purchase, and High Eagle Campground geotechnical review. All in favor? Committees? Awesome.
So we're going to just start that recording, so just call the meeting back to order.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. We'll call the meeting back to order. We are honored to have MLA Angela Pitt, Deputy Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta and Chair of Committees for the Provincial Government, joining us this morning. Thank you for joining us, MLA Pitt. We have our map up of our provincial ridings and the constituencies up there. And with the new drawing of the previous boundaries with the provincial ridings, at first we were a bit frustrated that we have now had 4 MLAs representing Wheatland County. Historically, there had been one that had encompassed the entire county, but we actually have found that there have been some benefits to having multiple MLAs that represent us, and just having that diversity of perspectives and sort of multiple voices that can help advocate for us. And we have appreciated your advocacy and your work in the legislature for Albertans and for Wheatland County residents. Welcome to our council meeting. And yeah, we'd love to hear what you are excited about the upcoming session. And I think, do you go back at like Halloween? Is that?
Yes, the day before Halloween.
Yeah.
The day before Halloween is the throne speech, which is problematic for lots of people with small children, but it'll be an interesting fall session. First, I'll say thank you so much for having me here. It's always a pleasure to come on out to, Strathmore, which is not in the riding of Airdrie East, but certainly to meet with representatives of the same constituents that we share. And I'll start with saying congratulations on your exit from the CMRB. A thing that never made sense, but I think that's probably one of the benefits of having 4 provincial representatives for this area, is there were 4 voices that were like, this doesn't make any sense. It's time to help get these guys out of there. So I'm really happy to see that. Really hopeful for this fall session. It'll be the first session of a real mandate with our new premier, and our team is really coming together. I am so encouraged by the conversations and the meetings that we've had over the summer and into the fall here. We just came out of a caucus retreat in Red Deer last week and did some really good team building stuff, some strategizing for the fall legislative session and agenda. I think we've got a number of really big issues to solve for Albertans. Affordability is top of mind all day long, and while we can't we can't tackle all of the issues that mostly lie in the hands of our federal government, I think we have a responsibility to help fix electricity prices, encourage municipalities to get more housing built, insurance. I see insurance as a big issue that we need to solve moving forward, home and auto. So. The fall agenda hasn't been released yet for this legislature. I'm really thinking hard, because if it, anyway, as Reeve, Amber, how come you're a Reeve, not a mayor? Well, some counties moved and you didn't.
I don't actually know why some counties have moved to mayor.
Okay.
I know of one county that went from Reeve to mayor and now is back to Reeve. I think Woodlands County did that. REEV is just traditionally rural municipalities. Council elects the REEV versus frequently mayors are elected during the general election. So we elect our REEV every year during our organizational meeting. I kind of like the fact that it delineates, most people don't know what a REEV is. So you have to say I'm the REEV of the county, which is similar to a mayor. But it is to me distinctly rural, which I think is good. So I like that piece, but we've never had that conversation, and I think it works the way it is. And
yeah, no, I think it's great. I still call the mayor of Rocky View County the REEV.
Yeah,
may get me into trouble someday, but
I wonder, did Rocky View, did they say they went back to REEV as well? They did.
did
They
they
went
go
back
back?
to REEV as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, there's been a few, and I haven't had that conversation yet. What spurred the return to REEV? But no. But you can still be, like, it's council can determine the title for the chief elected official.
Okay.
But yeah.
Gotcha. That's great.
Yeah.
More or less, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have for me. And really just hear your feedback too, I think in particular, as we head into this fall sitting, and tell me the ways in which I can help the great people and the great residents of Wheatland County.
Yeah, we appreciate that. I think you've certainly touched on a number of priority issues that we've heard from ratepayers from a provincial perspective. The affordability piece. We see electricity as a key driver for economic growth. It's certainly something that we hear about from potential investors. It's a consideration. And I tease the Alberta advantage is certainly people. But I also genuinely believe that electricity pricing has been one of the key drivers of our differentiated growth historically. So we need to get back to that. With the pause on the renewables, I think our council appreciates that. We have joined the voices of our colleagues across rural Alberta with concerns around things like reclamation requirements and securities, and those have been priority issues. We had just recently the AUC approved 1,280 acres of our best cropland. It was Class 2 soil in Councillor Bigger's division for a solar installation. So that at times raises concerns. We do balance that with the competing principles of landowner rights, and we will defend those with our dying breaths as well. So we want to defend.
No doubts.
We want to defend those farmers' rights to develop as they see fit. For us, we want those to be well-informed decisions when they're signing lease agreements or contracts. And we're optimistic that we'll come out of this pause with some of the strongest regulatory framework around energy in the world. And we already have one of the strongest energy sectors, both with traditional oil and gas and with renewables. So I'm excited about the regulatory framework that can be developed through such a focused engagement process that your government's undertaking. And I think we appreciate the opportunity to engage on that and ensure that the future of Albertans are protected and our grid and our energy supply and some of those things. So grateful for that. It was a bold move, and I know not without some challenges, but important that we get this right.
100%. We got to do things that make sense at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. And the feedback from the residents has been pretty positive.
Yeah. Most people, we do have a few residents who have projects, or we have one development that had a solar component to their development. I don't think that's going to be, from what we understand, affected by the pause. And some who, we're in conversations with potential developers that are asking what might this mean for a potential development. But with some of the clarification that has come out through the AUC, it's clear that projects can still be worked on, things can still, move forward, but that we can make sure that that framework is going to protect Albertans and the interests of all of those complex considerations that we need. So yeah, the feedback's been good.
Oh, that's good. Well, and I think it's important too, and I don't know the particulars of this project that you're speaking of, but sometimes that solar or wind element is added to the project to offset different credits elsewhere, and that's fine if that's the goal, but when it starts to affect our system and our rates and our people, we've got to figure out what the problem is and how to solve the problem. So yeah, we'll get there. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I hear a lot from ratepayers that we need to be pragmatic, like we can't let ideology compromise our global position. So that's exactly what your government's doing. So I certainly hear appreciation for that. The other piece where we sort of interface with the province around affordability is with housing. So we did just approve an amendment. We're bringing a resolution forward to RMA in November. It'll go to our district first in October, just around asking your government to consider some amendments to the affordable housing funding programs and how those applications are taken in and how funding is allocated. We currently have, our housing management body has been working for several years to endeavor to get funding for a new lodge or some additional lodge or affordable housing spaces. The current process and the preference for construction-ready projects means that housing management bodies all across Alberta are spending a lot of both human capacity in terms of board time, but also financial capacity, which we're a mandated member of the Wheatland Housing Management Body Board, and they have requisitioning power. So funds that are spent on business cases or conceptual designs or things like that come directly through our taxation with very little oversight or control of our council. And through conversations with colleagues across Alberta, we've come to realize that millions and millions of dollars are being spent on plans that aren't being built and are collecting dust on shelves. And we think there has to be a better way. And so we have a proposal that we're bringing forward for consideration. It occurred to us that in the Lougheed era, when I think they built 30 or 40 hospitals in 5 years, 20 of them are essentially cookie cutter replicas. Our hospital in Strathmore looks identical to the hospital in Canmore, which is identical to the hospital in Three Hills. There has to be efficiencies. Councillor Eichert has been involved in construction for decades. And from his analysis and just from our council's considerations, there has to be efficiencies in finding some model that is scalable, replicable, and could be used throughout Alberta. So that's what we're bringing forward. And then just more a needs-based allocation of funding versus the sort of everybody submitting proposals in the hopes that there will be funding allocated. So we're excited about that.
That's great.
We're excited about the development in Wheatland County. We did have, CGC has gotten some of their approvals, preliminary approvals, and de Havilland got their redesignation and their area concept plan approved on August 15th.
Were they having water issues? Did that get resolved?
So we have tasked our administration with developing a servicing strategy for the west side of Wheatland County. We have really good water servicing on the east side of the county. I think there was about 60, Councillor Kester, 60-ish million? $52 million of mainly provincial and federal tax dollars invested in a water line that serves the villages of Rocky Ford and Standard, our hamlets of Rosebud and Gleason. But the west side of our county has never had any infrastructure or servicing strategies to date, with the exception of Lakes of Muirfield does have a water treatment system that was put in by a private developer. So administration is working on a servicing strategy for that. Part of that, obviously, that we're prioritizing is water and wastewater servicing for that industrial corridor that de Havilland has their de Havilland field in. There is a water line that goes through that industrial park. It's a water line from Calgary. It services Chestermere and Strathmore. We do have an intermunicipal agreement, I believe, with the town of Strathmore, who owns the water line itself. And it was also funded, I think, 92% by, again, provincial, federal, I think, Water for Life and programming. So we're hopeful that with the agreement that we have in place, the historic agreement with the town of Strathmore, and we've started preliminary discussions with the city of Calgary and Mergontech about utilizing City of Calgary treated water under our water license and allocation to service that. That's one model. We've looked at groundwater. We've looked at potentially partnering with Rocky View County, or, we're trying to find the most efficient way to do it, and efficient both from a financial perspective, but also timeliness. And it will be phased. So
I know that Wheatland County is the envy of many in the aviation industry for being the host to de Havilland. So congratulations to you and your council and administration for making them a home.
Thank you. It's exciting for Wheatland County, but it's really exciting for all of Alberta. We've had an opportunity to have some discussions with the owners of de Havilland, and they are very, very committed to having the owner indicated to me that there's about 100,000 inputs per plane. And her hope would be that each of those inputs is built. Ideally, she would love to see that on de Havilland Field. They have room for other entrepreneurs and folks who are interested in manufacturing to co-locate with them to manufacture inputs. They know realistically that won't happen. So her next preference is for those to be built in Alberta. So there's going to be opportunities all through Alberta for people to manufacture inputs to the planes. And their bottom line is they want every plane fully Canadian built. So this is a significant opportunity for every municipality in Alberta. And yeah, just the employment opportunities. And I think just having de Havilland here and getting that name known for aviation in Alberta is going to be significant for diversifying.
That's great. Congratulations.
Well, we also couldn't do it without just the framework that the province has created around the competitive corporate tax and the red tape reduction. And, you know, all of that is conducive to projects like this coming to Alberta. And we only have decisions made like that through partnership between municipalities and the province. So,
yeah, that's good.
Welcome. You represent my division, a small portion of it. And so thank you for coming here. I was thinking, while I'm sitting here, about some local issues that you may or may not know of. One was a very controversial one in specifically that area was the Owl Sanctuary. You probably saw some stuff on social media about it, where a development and close neighbors, how they work together. It got overturned at subdivision development appeal, so they are currently operating under a 1-year permit. It'll come back to us in the future. The other one would be a Silvis project, which works with the City of Calgary and biosolids, that has been operating in the county for over 10 years, I would say. Originally started as a project to develop bad soils, like really sandy area soil. They would come out and they'd plant willows on land, and then they'd put biosolids in, and then they'd take the willows off and do things. That project has since expanded into some direct application to crop, which has had some definite resident concerns that I've seen and talked to people. They've had biosolids stacked across from their house. They're not very happy about that. Philosophically, like I look at stuff all over the world, biosolids to me in Canada it's ridiculous that we're doing this, because in Europe they've stopped doing this practice decades ago and they're burning it now because they realize that the pharmaceutical load of some of this stuff, once it's on the soil, you can't get rid of it. So when I look at a lot of mistakes that we do here environmentally and stuff, it's amazing that we don't look where somebody else has done it before and learn from them, but we keep making the same mistakes over and over again, and then eventually we're going to be in that portion of it. So these residents definitely don't want this project here. Of course, City of Calgary utilizes it as a disposal of their product that they say falls within parameters of Alberta environment at the time. But once it's on the soil, it's there forever. So I was involved in the wastewater industry for years. I'm very aware of what stuff a wastewater plant can and cannot remove and where it collects. So I don't know if you ever played with mercury as a kid, or we did. You put it in a toilet bowl, you can't get it out. And it's the same in a wastewater plant. It will go to the bottom of a plant, and that's where the sludge is. That's where that goes. It will go to the soil, and it will keep migrating down into the groundwater because it's so heavy. So things like that. It's just something to think about.
So where does that sit? What's the process? It's expanded under permission of Alberta Environment.
I don't know if it's necessarily expanded, or we weren't, council at the time wasn't aware of a direct application to land, or how that, we're reviewing that. I think staff are reviewing that now, because originally we toured the site and I believe we were all told that it was only the willows. 3 years after that, all of a sudden I get a call from a neighbor, why is this piled across from my house? And their original design had a berm around it and everything, and they were said, It'll never run off. We'll put it on. I've gone out to a site myself, watched City of Calgary trucks dumping on a site with no berm around it and is upstream of a wetland. And it's like, well, if it heavy rains, which we do get some years, there's runoff issues. And of course, these people are concerned about their groundwater and everything, like everybody else is. And it's a very sandy soil because that's exactly why they're there, is this big sand dune underneath that area. And so, and they're dealing with one landowner that is, that owns a lot of the land, and they are, I'll tell you offline who they are.
Okay. That's,
So there's some issues there, and the residents chew my ear quite often, and I've talked to different things. I've talked to my council about it, talked to staff about it. We're going to review it, I believe, in Ag Service Board to find out if there's any options for us. But it's one of these things that I've had another one in my area where it sounded good at the time, but once that approval is from Alberta Environment, it just kind of seems to march forward, and we're the last ones to know. And that is not, to me, acceptable in any way, shape, or form. We should have, we're responsible to the landowner all the time, so.
if it's helpful, we've had some issues with neighbors in Alberta Environment in the county in the past, and we just got everybody in a room and had a pretty frank discussion, and it didn't solve the issue, but it was helpful, and there was at least an opportunity to share information. I'm very happy to coordinate that with you and the Reeve and the residents in the area of Alberta Environment, and see when you're ready for that, let me know.
I've had informally with a landowner on their deck in the summer while it was there, and she wanted us there. It was very fresh, and having the Silva's Partnership City Calgary representative there on site. And I basically said, would you do this to your neighbor? Like, this is where you can smell it, you can see it. Like, why would you do this? You know, so it really hit home to him. But I think having Alberta Environment there as the regulatory body is absolutely a good thing. This is their problem. They're the overseer of it. The county is not. We've had to deal with this with another site within my division that's not in your area. But it was where the county had to step up to the plate and spend substantial dollars to fix a problem that wasn't necessarily ours. It's very similar in this. So, and it's something that the regulatory body, when someone calls and says, I have an issue, they don't call me unless they don't get an answer from them. And then they call me, and then I go up the ladder, and administration gets involved when the regulatory body should do a better job.
Yeah.
Must do a better job, in my opinion.
Yeah, happy to help.
Thank you.
Good luck.
It's a challenge.
I think when I was knocking on doors there was new feedlot proposal concerns. Okay, good. Next. No.
It does speak to, though, the challenges between quasi-judicial boards like the NRCB and AUC and AER, LPRT to a certain extent as well, absolutely. And just the interplay between like local land use considerations, jurisdiction, things like that. RMA is doing some work. We have a board that Reeve Schneider from Balkan County is chairing that's going to be bringing forward some just some summary of some of the issues and some recommendations from RMA for your government, because it plays into sort of those interjurisdictional challenges. And because my ratepayers will show up at my door or on the road beside my house when I'm walking or that kind of thing. And so they know that they have that direct access to us, and we're, acutely aware of the impact to quality of life that some of these challenges can create for folks. And we do want to take that long-term view of impacts of what we're doing, especially when it's impacts of issues that maybe are coming from a city that are then being brought out into rural areas, not being addressed where they're being generated, and then being brought out and becoming an issue for rural residents and your constituents and our ratepayers. And there's definitely some issues around that. And
what if you got back in the CMRB?
Yeah, that's not the answer. That's not the answer.
Is that Dave Schneider, former MLA Dave Schneider?
No, sorry, Jason Schneider.
Jason Schneider, okay.
Yeah.
That's
so we're looking for solutions.
Okay.
And we know like everything, there's competing principles to consider, but definitely it creates significant challenges. Deputy Reeve Clausen seems to get the brunt of a lot of them in our county, just through happenstance of who he represents and the area he represents. But I think those are kind of some highlights of our priority issues, and it's exciting to hear that you're looking forward to the next session, and we'll be following that closely. We'll stay in close contact with some of the challenges and how we can work together. If everyone's comfortable, we could recess for lunch, and we would love if you were able to join us for lunch, and we could continue some informal conversations as we eat. Sure. If you're up for that.
That'd be great.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Let's recess until 1:15, and then we can reconvene. Awesome. Has moved out of closed session, and we do have motions arising from closed session. Council's wishes. Let's start with motions regarding Goldfinch Industrial Park.
My computer's not working.
Oh,
it just came up.
Council's wishes.
Which one are you looking for?
We'll start with
Oh,
Goldfinch. You've got it on the paper if it's easier.
that council approves the addition of the construction of Township 222 from Highway 24 to Range Road 262 to the 5-year road construction program. Further, that council approves 60,000 be added to the 2023 capital budget to begin preliminary engineering for the construction of Township 222 to be funded from the Transportation Unpaved Roadways Reserve.
Perfect. Just a tiny clarification, reconstruction for both parts of the motion.
Oh, reconstruction, right.
Perfect. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to motions arising regarding land purchase opportunity.
I'll move that council direct administration to proceed with negotiating the purchase of the property described in the report and to bring back a report to council with the proposed purchase agreement.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. We will move to motions arising regarding High Eagle Campground geotechnical review.
I move that council accepts a report dated September 19, 2023 regarding setback requirements for structures located within the High Eagle Campground as information.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Now that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda, and meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.